We're back, ladies and gentlemen. It's movie night, and we've got one hell of a cracker coming up today. Oh, The Wedding Singer. It's awesome. Guys, you gotta fix what you're doing because this was one of the biggest comedies of the 90s. No question about it. This is Adam Sandler at his absolute peak. I mean, I don't mean screaming, throwing spaghetti at a wall here. I mean pure heart in his sleeve, right? Guitar in hand, emotional, romantic kind of human Sandler. And, you've got to remember, this is this is pre-Netflix, pre-Instagram fillers. When rom-coms, they had bloody soul, lads, and the Wedding Singer, it's not just another chick flick. It's not. Because even me and my boys, we grew up on this movie. It is awesome. It was a time machine back to the 80s. It was made in the 90s, but it's based on living in the 80s. And a decade of Hairspray, enough shoulder pads to armor a small country. This is the thing about this movie. It's got this balance. And it is funny as hell, right? I mean, there's also real kind of sadness behind it too. And they don't go too intense. They don't go over the top with the intensity. It's just the perfect blend of, you're like, oh man, okay, I feel bad for that person. But again, it keeps it light. And, that kind of sort of hooks you like. And, Robbie is Adam Sandler. He's the good-hearted, he's a small-town wedding singer. And he's just trying to make people happy for a living. You gotta give to the guy. He's the bloke keeping the party going. He starts the party and he keeps it going. And he's smiling for everybody else, while inside, you do realise throughout the movie, the guy's falling apart. And then you've Drew Barrymore as Julia. I mean, the cutest little, the sweetest, softest, just a lovable character in a rom-com history. And the chemistry between the two, it's lightning in a bottle, man. It really is. It's so good. And here's the funny thing. Drew Barrymore actually wore her own jacket in this movie. Did you believe it or that? I also like to throw in some trivia here. But she wore her real-life jacket. That's a nice touch, man. That's keeping things real, more grounded. And I know that acting side of things, that things can help you. Even eating chewing gum or eating food. That's why you always see Brad Pitt eating in a lot of movies. If you've ever noticed that. In Ocean's 11, always eating. Always eating. And that's an acting trick. It's, well, not a trick per se, but what it does is it gets you out of your head. It keeps you more grounded. You feel like more of yourself, It takes you out of that, oh, I'm acting, I've got to perform this, I've got to perform. It's just one of those little, whatever you call it, tip, trick, neat thing to do. And just like the jacket here with Drew Barrymore, same thing. And here's a fun fact that a lot of people maybe do not know. Carrie Fisher, who is Princess Leia in Star Wars, actually rewrote this script. You believe that? Princess Leia herself? What the hell? She worked 6 months on the script, uncredited, and that does happen quite a lot. And adding just heart, strength, dimension to Drew Barrymore's character. And that's why Julia, she feels so real, the cute girl next door, Fisher, she had this incredible knack for making women in film smart and emotionally grounded without stripping away the warmth. Her rule, make the woman smarter and the love scenes better. And she did exactly that. So the soul of the movie it's a female. It's Carrie Fisher and Drew Barrymore steering the emotional ship with Sandler's vulnerability as the heartbeat underneath it all. Every great movie has a heartbreak, right? Most of them do. And The Wedding Singer doesn't just poke your heart, it just slaps you right across the face. And Robbie's set to marry Linda. You'll see what happens. The dream girl, or so he thinks. And until she leaves him at the altar. And then it's that nightmare we've all imagined, but I guess never wanted to live, huh? The way Sandler, he plays the scene, you can see every ounce of pain with them without saying a word. It's not overreacted. He just kept it real. And the whole moment is grounded in truth because Sandler himself had been through that heartbreak around that time. So it definitely does help. You can feel it. It's not a performance. it's kind of therapy for him, I'd say. And that when Robbie gets back on stage, heartbroken at his next wedding gig, and he's recording "Love Stinks." You know, I mean, that's pretty good, man. That is pretty goddamn good of a scene. That raw emotion, like in the form of comedy, and he's literally turning the pain into sheer entertainment. You know, and you've got Julia, back to her, the sweet, engaged Julia, trying to cheer him up, and meanwhile she's marrying Glenn, a complete tosser. This guy is grade A-hole, man. And a guy who cheats, he lies, and looks like he'd rather be on Wall Street than with a woman who genuinely cares about the guy. And fun trivia for you, the role of Glenn almost went to Christopher McDonald, Shooter himself. Oh yeah, Shooter McGavin himself from Happy Gilmore. I think he would have been brilliant in it, but I gotta admit, this guy who played it was awesome. And Sandler actually wanted him, as in Shooter McGavin, but the studio thought he was too old to play Drew Barrymore's fiancé. How weird is that? Now, instead of, we got Matthew Glave. He nailed it. He nailed it. But, it's wild to think of a world where Shooter McGavin was cheating on Drew Barrymore in a DeLorean. It's Shooter-like. Let's rewind a little bit, because The Wedding Singer was the movie that made Adam Sandler a star. It genuinely did. He just went through the roof, just like when Russell Crowe hit Gladiator. I mean, the just A-list box office guys at this stage. This was Adam Sandler's Gladiator here. And, he had Happy Gilmore. But those they were cult classics. It didn't hit the roof like this one. And this was the film that it made him mainstream. It grossed over 120 million. It's 120 million, that's right, worldwide. Massive numbers for a rom-com in the late 90s. Massive, And here's what happened even more impressive. Carrie Fisher, Jude Apatow, and Sandler himself all worked uncredited on the script. Adam Sandler, a very talented guy with these type of things. And that's like a dream of comedy minds. And there's more. The movie was so beloved, it got turned into a full Broadway musical in the early 2000s. I mean, that tells you a lot. That's like a huge compliment. That's like a movie star getting mimicked and people doing funny impressions of a movie star, and they're a movie star themselves. That's when you really think, oh my God, we've hit it. We've hit a home run here, lads. And this is how universal it is. Everyone can relate to heartbreak. Everyone wants to believe love still exists and enjoys being a little lost at some point in their 20s. And even the cameos are brilliant. Steve Buscemi, oh dear Lord God. I think this is probably the funniest cameo when we're talking about not supporting actors, not actors, just cameo itself. Short couple of scenes, in, out, done. This for me is probably the greatest and funniest, unbelievable cameo performance of all time. Whether it's a drama or it's a comedy or both. Absolutely unreal. And you can see people do this type of drunken bitterness, angriness. I think a lot of people can relate to the guy. It's and Sandler's buddy Chris Farley was supposed to have a role in the movie, but he was in rehab at the time apparently, and tragically he passed away just before the film's release. Kind of, I suppose it adds a bittersweet layer, doesn't it? And I mean that in a good way, of course. You realize how much heart was behind the whole era of comedy, that old Saturday Night Live brotherhood that Sandler always carried into his films. And here's where The Wedding Singer takes it to the next level. Robbie starts helping Julia plan her wedding. That's a kind of a weird scenario. A straight guy helping your soon-to-be wife plan her wedding out of nowhere. I'd be very suspicious of that in real life, but okay. Which is a recipe for emotional torture. And imagine planning someone else's perfect love story where you're still bleeding from your own breakup, That can be tough too. But it's in those little moments like where the film's brilliance, it really does shine. It's like the scene where Robbie and Julia rehearse the kiss just for practice. It's kind of awkward, innocent, funny, and just great. You can see everything in their eyes, And again, Carrie Fisher's touch, she added that depth. And Every woman in her scripts knows something that the audience didn't realize yet. You know, that's why Julia feels layered, and why you do root for her so damn much. You love laughing at the guy Glenn, the absolute a-hole, but you want Julia to end up with Robbie in this. And then there's that moment with the airplane tickets when Robbie realizes Julia's about to marry the wrong guy. You can feel the panic, the desperation. It's not just about losing the girl. For him, it's like losing faith. And, you know, I think we can all relate to that. And guess what? Robbie, his heartbreak was logical. It was understandable. It was right. Maybe wrong too. But you can relate to it. Now the grand finale, guys, okay? Now look, I don't like to give away the end of movies if you've never seen them before, but this is fairly obvious what happens at the end of a comedy movie like this, okay? There's always a happy ending. So let's just cut through it. The airplane scene. The world's gone wrong. Robbie's lost hope. Julia's on her way to Vegas to marry a-hole boy. And then, boom, Billy Idol sitting in first class. Robbie pours his heart out, I want to grow with you, and the entire plane becomes his audience. It's pure cinema, and it's a very charming scene because it's not like an intense, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio, Marlon Brando, Daniel Day-Lewis pouring your heart out and you can feel them scream off the screen. Adam Sandler just kept it light, kept it cool, and so charming, you know, that he just charms you. Did I even say that right? Charms you? Charms you. Yeah. I can't speak English, lads. But that's the love. Like, it's the human stuff, the grand gestures. And by the time Julia tears up, you know, that was the most beautiful song I've ever heard. You're already crying into your pint. Like, and by the end, Wedding Singer, lads, wraps everything in warmth. Robbie's found his voice again. Julia's found real love. And we, the audience, have fallen back in love with love. You know, it's sometimes one of those charming, light-hearted banter movies that can heal a lot of people. I know we're going to get a bit, if you think I'm corny and cringy, but you know, like there's depth in things, like there's depth in the shallowness of this movie. We don't have to always go down the rabbit hole of intense drama to learn something or relate to something or to even heal us, you know? That's the wonderful light touch about the humor, the comedy, the wonderfulness of The Wedding Singer. And the movie isn't about being perfect. It's just about being real. And it's about falling, kind of getting hurt, and showing up with a song in your heart. And, you know, when you learn that Carrie Fisher spent half a year making Julia stronger, that Drew Barrymore wore her own jacket, that Steve Buscemi dropped in uncredited just for the laugh. You realize why the movie worked. It wasn't fake. It was built with love. And yeah, call me crazy, call me cringy, call me whatever, Peter. You're gross. I don't give a damn. But guys, whether you're a man or a woman, The Wedding Singer, an awesome, incredibly charming movie that you just have to watch. Peter. Wow.